There is a quiet misunderstanding about aging that most people never recognize until it is too late. It has nothing to do with the number of candles on a birthday cake, and everything to do with a slow, invisible process that has been unfolding inside your body since childhood. You may feel the effects of this process in ways you have come to accept as normal, the little extra effort it takes to recover from a busy day, the occasional mental fog that seems to arrive without reason, the subtle decline in strength that makes certain tasks feel heavier than they once did. But here is what is rarely explained. Many of these changes are not aging itself. They are the accumulated results of patterns that can be understood, addressed, and in many cases, meaningfully slowed. The body you inhabit today is not simply running down like an old clock. It is responding to decades of signals, some you chose, some you never knew you were sending. And the most important question is not how to stop time, but how to work with the body's own design to preserve what matters most for as long as possible. What follows is not a list of urgent prescriptions or miracle protocols. It is something far more valuable, a clear, grounded understanding of how health actually unfolds across a lifetime, and what remains within your influence at any age. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The long view. Understanding health across a lifetime. There is a question worth considering at any age, but perhaps most urgently in the years when the pace of life begins to slow and the horizon ahead becomes more visible. The question is this: what does it mean to be healthy? Not in the sense of a check mark on a medical chart or a clean bill of health from a yearly physical, but in the deeper sense of being able to live fully, actively, and independently for as long as possible. For most of human history, this question was largely academic. People lived, people aged, people eventually declined, and medicine focused on treating the illnesses that appeared along the way. But in recent decades, a different way of thinking has emerged, one that looks not just at the diseases that shorten life, but at the processes that determine how well we live throughout all our years. This shift in thinking represents something fundamental. It moves attention from the end point to the entire journey. It asks not only how to avoid falling ill, but how to maintain the capacity to do the things that matter most, for as long as possible. And perhaps most importantly, it recognizes that the choices made today, at any age, send ripples forward through time that shape the quality of the years ahead. The unseen timeline of health. One of the most surprising discoveries in modern health research is that many processes affecting how we age begin far earlier than anyone once believed. They do not start with the first noticeable ache or the first prescription. They begin quietly, invisibly, decades before they ever produce symptoms. Consider what happens inside the arteries. The smooth, flexible lining that allows blood to flow freely does not suddenly become clogged overnight. The process that leads to blockages, the buildup of fatty deposits, the inflammation, the gradual narrowing, starts in childhood. Autopsies of teenagers who died from accidents have revealed early signs of these changes. The disease is present, but it has not yet become disease. This long, silent development explains something that might otherwise seem puzzling. Heart attacks are virtually unheard of in young people, yet heart disease remains the leading cause of death in later life. The condition develops over decades, progressing at different rates in different people based on genetics, lifestyle, and circumstance. The same principle applies to many other conditions associated with aging. They do not appear suddenly. They unfold slowly, quietly, beneath the surface of awareness. Other aspects of health follow a different pattern. Cognitive abilities, for example, do not begin declining from birth. They improve for decades. The brain continues developing, building connections, refining its efficiency well into early adulthood. Fluid intelligence, the ability to solve novel problems, to think quickly and flexibly, typically reaches its peak in the 20s or 30s. Physical capacities follow similar trajectories. Strength, power, and endurance all increase for years before eventually beginning their gradual decline. Understanding these different timelines matters because it changes how we think about intervention. Some processes benefit from attention early in life. Others become more relevant later. But at every stage, the body is recording the choices made, the habits formed, the patterns established. For those in later decades, the question becomes how to slow the rate of decline, how to preserve what remains, how to extend the period of vitality as far as possible into the future. This is not about stopping time. That is not possible. It is about bending the trajectory, changing the slope of the line. The information buried in family history. If there is a single piece of information more valuable than any laboratory test, it is the story written in the health of your family. This is not simply about knowing whether your parents lived to an old age. It is about understanding the specific patterns, the particular conditions, the age at which they appeared, the course they took. A well-collected family history provides insights that no genetic test can match. Even the most advanced whole genome sequencing cannot tell you what you can learn from knowing that your father developed high blood pressure at 50, that your mother's sister had breast cancer in her 60s, that your grandfather on your mother's side maintained sharp mental function into his 90s while your grandmother on your father's side struggled with memory loss in her 80s. The reason for this is both simple and profound. Most genes are not deterministic. They do not guarantee that a particular condition will develop. Instead, they create susceptibilities, tendencies that may or may not express themselves depending on environmental factors, lifestyle choices, and the complex interplay of many genes working together. Most conditions that concern people, heart disease, cancer, dementia, diabetes, are polygenic, meaning they involve multiple genes, many of which scientists do not fully understand. A family history captures not just genetic inheritance, but patterns of environment and behavior that may have shaped health outcomes across generations. It reveals what actually happened to people whose genetic makeup and life circumstances you share to some degree. Gathering this information requires more than a casual conversation at a holiday gathering. It means asking specific questions about parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and siblings. Did they have high blood pressure? At what age was it diagnosed? Did they take medication for it? What about cholesterol? Were there any cancers? At what age? What was their cognitive function like in the last decade of life? Did they maintain independence? Did they have falls or fractures? Did they have osteoporosis? For those whose grandparents are deceased, parents may need to search their memories, prompted by specific questions, old letters, family Bibles, and conversations with older relatives can fill in gaps. Large families can be particularly informative because patterns become clearer when many siblings are available for observation. This information serves not as a prediction of fate, but as a guide to attention. If heart disease runs in the family, you know to pay particular attention to cardiovascular health. If dementia has appeared in multiple relatives, you have reason to focus on brain health. The family history tells you where to direct your efforts, which aspects of health deserve extra vigilance. The question of when to begin. There is a natural reluctance to think seriously about health when you are young and feel invincible. The teenager cannot imagine the body of a 70-year-old, the person in their 20s, full of energy and resilience, has little motivation to consider processes that will not produce symptoms for decades. This is entirely human and entirely understandable. At the other end of life, motivation changes completely. People facing the end of life would give anything for more time, more health, more ability to be present with those they love. But at that point, the runway is short. The opportunity for meaningful intervention has largely passed. Somewhere between these extremes lies a window of opportunity. It arrives when you have lived enough to recognize your own vulnerability, when you have seen parents or friends experience health decline, when you can project forward and imagine what the coming decades might bring. Yet it must arrive while enough time remains to make a difference, to change the trajectory, to bend the arc of your health in a better direction. For many people, this window opens in middle age. The 40s and 50s bring changes that are hard to ignore. Recovery from injury takes longer. Weight that once came off easily now lingers. Energy fluctuates in ways it did not before. These changes serve as signals, reminders that the body is not the invulnerable instrument it once seemed, but the window can open earlier or later. Some people receive wake-up calls in their 30s, perhaps a health scare, perhaps the birth of a child that shifts their perspective on the future. Others do not feel the urgency until their 60s, when retirement suddenly makes the question of health and independence immediate and personal. The ideal time to begin paying serious attention to longevity is whenever you first recognize that you have something to protect. The specific age matters less than the realization that health is not guaranteed, that it requires attention, that the choices made today will shape the possibilities available tomorrow. The delicate balance of blood sugar, among the many processes that influence health across a lifetime, few are as central as the regulation of blood sugar. This simple molecule, glucose, serves as the primary fuel for nearly every cell in the body. The brain runs on it. Muscles demand it during activity. The entire system is designed to maintain its level within a remarkably narrow range. At any given moment, the average adult has only about 4 to 6 grams of glucose circulating in the entire bloodstream. This is roughly 1 teaspoon. Yet this tiny amount is constantly being consumed and constantly replenished by the liver, which releases stored glucose in a carefully calibrated dance with insulin and other hormones. If that level were to double to just 2 teaspoons, it would meet the diagnostic criteria for type 2 diabetes. This condition is not merely a matter of high numbers on a lab report. Excess glucose in the blood begins to stick to proteins throughout the body, a process that damages tissues over time. Small blood vessels are particularly vulnerable. Those in the eyes, the kidneys, the heart, the brain, the extremities, all suffer when glucose remains elevated. This is why diabetes increases the risk of so many conditions: blindness, kidney failure, heart attacks, strokes, amputations, and even dementia. The damage is not confined to one organ system. It spreads wherever blood flows. But even for people who do not have diabetes, glucose levels matter. Research suggests that within the normal range, lower average glucose is associated with better health outcomes. This does not mean that any food raising blood sugar is harmful. It means that the body's ability to handle glucose, to move it from the bloodstream into cells where it belongs, is a fundamental aspect of metabolic health. This capacity is not fixed. It changes based on many factors. Sleep quality dramatically affects glucose disposal. When sleep is disrupted or insufficient, the body becomes less efficient at moving glucose into muscles, and levels rise as a result. Physical activity has the opposite effect, increasing the muscle's demand for fuel and improving sensitivity to insulin. Muscle mass itself matters. More muscle tissue provides more places for glucose to go. Stress hormones also influence glucose regulation, creating another link between mental state and physical health. Understanding these connections opens possibilities for intervention. Improving sleep, increasing activity, building and maintaining muscle, managing stress, all of these support better glucose control. The effect is cumulative. Small improvements in multiple areas add up to meaningful change in how the body handles this essential but potentially harmful molecule. The three paths to energy balance. For most people in developed countries, the fundamental nutritional challenge is not deficiency, but excess. The body evolved over millions of years in environments where food was scarce and uncertain. It developed sophisticated mechanisms for storing energy, laying down fat reserves during times of plenty to draw upon during times of want. This was a survival advantage for most of human history. In the modern world, where food is abundant and inexpensive, this same capacity becomes a liability. More than 70% of adults in the United States consume more energy than they expend. The body continues to do what it evolved to do: store the excess. The result is a state of chronic overnutrition that drives many of the health problems associated with aging. Correcting this imbalance requires consuming less energy than the body uses. There are three primary strategies for achieving this, each with its own logic and its own challenges. The first is direct calorie restriction. This means deliberately eating less, regardless of what specific foods are consumed. The advantage of this approach is its simplicity. Calories are calories, and reducing total intake creates an energy deficit. The challenge is that hunger is a powerful biological signal, and sustained calorie restriction requires ongoing effort and awareness. The second strategy is dietary restriction. This means limiting certain types of foods, perhaps carbohydrates, perhaps fats, perhaps animal products, depending on the specific approach. If the restrictions are significant enough, they indirectly reduce total calorie intake because the range of available foods narrows. This is why so many different diets can be effective for weight loss. They all create a calorie deficit, though they do so through different mechanisms. The third approach is time restriction. This involves limiting the hours during which eating occurs, creating a narrower daily window for food consumption. By concentrating meals into a shorter period, total intake often decreases naturally. The body also spends more time in a fasted state, which may have metabolic effects beyond simple calorie reduction. All three strategies can work, and all have limitations. The key is finding an approach that fits an individual's lifestyle, preferences, and circumstances. The specific method matters less than consistency over time. For people over 50, an additional consideration comes into play. The body becomes less responsive to protein signals, a phenomenon called anabolic resistance. Maintaining muscle mass requires adequate protein intake, even while reducing total calories. This means that the composition of the diet matters. Protein cannot be sacrificed in the pursuit of calorie reduction without consequences for muscle tissue. The nutrient density problem. There is another factor complicating the nutritional picture, one that has received far less attention than debates about fats versus carbohydrates. The food available today is simply less nutritious than it was decades ago. For the same number of calories, you receive fewer vitamins, minerals, and beneficial compounds than your grandparents would have from similar foods. This decline traces back to the soil. Modern agricultural practices, intensive tillage, heavy fertilizer use, limited crop rotation have degraded soil quality over time. Plants grown in depleted soil are less healthy themselves. They contain lower concentrations of the micronutrients that humans depend upon. Animals eating these plants are similarly compromised. The old saying holds true: you cannot be healthier than the animal you eat, which cannot be healthier than the plant it eats, which cannot be healthier than the soil it grows in. Nutrient density declines at every step. This realization has sparked growing interest in regenerative agriculture, an approach that focuses on rebuilding soil health. By minimizing tillage, eliminating synthetic fertilizers, rotating crops, and integrating animals into farming systems, regenerative methods aim to restore the living ecosystem beneath our feet. Healthier soil produces more nutrient-dense food. It also sequesters carbon, potentially helping address climate change while improving human health. For individuals, the practical implications are less about changing the entire agricultural system and more about making informed choices. When possible, seeking out food grown in healthy soil makes sense. Farmers markets, community-supported agriculture, and direct relationships with local producers can provide access to food grown with attention to soil health. Growing even a small portion of your own vegetables connects you directly to the process and ensures quality control. The complexity of soil rivals that of the human gut microbiome, possibly exceeding it. The billions of organisms living in healthy soil form relationships with plant roots, exchange nutrients, and create the conditions for robust growth. Laboratory attempts to replicate this complexity face fundamental challenges. While technology may eventually produce alternatives, there is no current substitute for food grown in living soil. The supplement question. Given the challenges of obtaining adequate nutrition from food alone, many people turn to supplements. This is a realm where clarity is essential, because the supplement industry varies enormously in quality, and marketing claims often outpace evidence. A reasonable approach to supplementation starts with the recognition that supplements are exactly what the name implies, supplements to a healthy diet, not replacements for one. The goal is to fill gaps, to provide insurance against days when food choices fall short, to address specific needs that may not be met through diet alone. Greens powders offer one example. If you accept the evidence that adequate vegetable consumption supports health, and most experts do, despite limitations in the research, then a daily greens supplement provides a foundation. It ensures that even on days when vegetables are scarce in the diet, the body receives a baseline of plant nutrients. This is not a substitute for eating vegetables, but a backup. Vitamin D deserves attention because deficiency is common, particularly in northern climates and among people who spend little time outdoors. The research on vitamin D has been confusing, with some studies showing benefits and others not. Much of this confusion stems from poorly designed trials that ask the wrong questions. Maintaining adequate levels, typically defined as blood concentrations between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter, is reasonable, and many people cannot achieve this through sun exposure alone. Magnesium comes in forms with different purposes. The poorly absorbed forms, citrate, glycinate, oxide, promote bowel regularity and can help with constipation at appropriate doses. Slow-absorbing forms support muscle function and may reduce cramping and benign heart palpitations. A specialized form called magnesium L-threonate crosses the blood-brain barrier and may support cognitive health. Fish oil provides EPA and DHA, omega-3 fatty acids that benefit both heart and brain. EPA appears somewhat more protective for cardiovascular health. DHA for brain function. Given low fish consumption in the typical Western diet, supplementation makes sense, provided the source is tested for contaminants like mercury and PCBs. Probiotics have long been viewed skeptically due to limited evidence. Recent research has changed this for specific formulations. One well-designed study found that a particular probiotic improved blood sugar control in people with type 2 diabetes by supporting the production of butyrate, a compound that benefits metabolism, even without diabetes. Supporting healthy glucose regulation has potential value. B vitamins, particularly in their methylated forms, round out a basic regimen. Ashwagandha and glycine before bed may support relaxation and sleep quality. The key across all supplements is quality. Third-party testing provides assurance that what is on the label matches what is in the bottle. Brands like Jarrow and Pure Encapsulations have established reputations for quality control. Paying a premium for verified products is worthwhile given the variability in the marketplace. The movement prescription. If there is one piece of health advice that comes closest to universal agreement, it is this: move your body every day. The form, intensity, and duration matter less than consistency. Movement is not something to fit in when other obligations allow. It is the foundation upon which other health practices rest. The reasons extend far beyond the obvious benefits for weight and cardiovascular health. Movement signals the body in profound ways. It tells muscles to maintain their mass. It tells bones to retain their density. It tells the brain to keep making connections. It tells the metabolic system to stay sensitive to insulin. It tells the entire organism that it is still needed, still functional, still worth maintaining. Different types of movement serve different purposes. Aerobic activity, walking, swimming, cycling, supports heart and lung function. It improves circulation, enhances endurance, and helps regulate blood sugar. For most people, this is the most accessible form of movement and the easiest to incorporate into daily life. Strength training addresses a different need. Muscle mass peaks in young adulthood and then gradually declines. This loss accelerates with age and has profound consequences. Low muscle mass is associated with higher mortality, reduced independence, and lower quality of life. The person who cannot rise from a chair without assistance, who cannot carry groceries, who cannot play with grandchildren, this person may be of sound mind and free from disease, but still suffers a diminished existence. For postmenopausal women, strength training carries additional importance. The loss of estrogen accelerates bone loss, increasing risk of osteoporosis and fractures. Bones respond to load. They become stronger when they must bear weight. This does not require complicated equipment or elaborate routines. Simple movements, squats, lunges, carrying heavy objects, provide the necessary stimulus. Farmer's carries, in which you walk while holding heavy weights in each hand, build bone density while also improving grip strength and balance. Balance training deserves attention as well. Falls are a leading cause of injury and loss of independence in older adults. The ability to recover from a stumble, to maintain stability on uneven ground, is not automatic. It requires practice. Simple balance exercises, standing on one foot, walking heel to toe, practicing getting up from the floor, build the neural pathways that prevent falls. The ideal movement practice incorporates all these elements. It includes daily walking or similar aerobic activity. It includes 2 or 3 strength sessions per week, focusing on major muscle groups. It includes brief balance practice, perhaps integrated into daily routines. It includes flexibility work to maintain range of motion. None of this requires a gym membership or expensive equipment, though both can be helpful. It requires only the commitment to move consistently, day after day. The physical-emotional connection. There is a tendency to think of health in compartments. Physical here, emotional there. The body is the body. The mind is the mind, and they operate separately. This division is convenient but false. The two are inseparable, constantly influencing each other in ways both obvious and subtle. Consider what happens when the body is not functioning well. Poor sleep leaves you irritable. Chronic pain erodes patience. Nutritional deficiencies produce fatigue that masquerades as depression. Low vitamin D levels can manifest as low mood, low energy, a general sense of not feeling right. No amount of talk therapy will correct a problem rooted in physiology. The reverse is equally true. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, which affects blood sugar regulation, immune function, and inflammation. Anxiety disrupts sleep, which then affects every other system. Grief can feel like a physical weight because it is, in part, a physical experience. The body holds what the mind processes. This connection becomes more important with age because the physical challenges accumulate. Joints ache. Energy fluctuates. Sleep becomes lighter. These changes are not just inconveniences. They affect mood, outlook, and the capacity for joy. They can make social engagement feel like effort. They can shrink the world to the size of a living room. Addressing emotional health requires attention to this physical substrate. It means ensuring that the body's basic needs are met: sleep, nutrition, movement, pain management, before assuming that emotional difficulties require purely psychological solutions. It means recognizing that fatigue may be fatigue, not depression, that irritability may be hunger or poor sleep, not a character flaw. But emotional health encompasses more than the absence of mental illness. It includes relationships, purpose, fulfillment, joy, spontaneity. These are not luxuries. They are essential components of a life worth living, and they become more precious as the years accumulate. Joy often hides in small moments: a conversation with a friend, a task shared with a child, a walk in good weather. Spontaneity suffers when life becomes too rigid, too scheduled, too optimized. The person who cannot deviate from the Saturday list of chores misses the chance to help a child protect his tomato plants from squirrels, to take an unexpected walk, to say yes to an unplanned invitation. These small deviations from routine often produce the memories that matter most. For people whose lives have been shaped by control and perfectionism, spontaneity requires conscious effort. It means occasionally choosing connection over completion. It means recognizing that the list will still be there tomorrow, but the moment for being present with someone you love is now or never. The patterns that shape behavior. Many of the behaviors that undermine health, the ones people know are problematic but continue anyway, trace back to patterns established long ago. They are not simply bad habits. They are adaptations, strategies that once served a purpose but have become maladaptive in adult life. A child growing up in an unpredictable environment learns to control what can be controlled. This may mean rigid routines, perfectionism, a constant drive to do more, be more, achieve more. These traits help the child survive. They provide a sense of agency in a world that feels chaotic. They earn approval and safety. The same traits in an adult create problems. The drive to control becomes rigidity. Perfectionism becomes a source of chronic stress. Achievement at all costs damages relationships. The adaptation that protected the child now harms the adult. Similarly, a child who learned that emotions were not safe may develop strategies for avoiding feeling. Numbing through food, through work, through constant activity. These strategies work in childhood. In adulthood, they disconnect the person from their own experience and from others. Understanding these patterns is not about blame. It is about recognizing that behaviors have histories, that the choices made today are shaped by forces that may have nothing to do with current circumstances. This recognition opens the possibility of change, not through willpower alone, but through understanding and gradual reprogramming. The motivation to undertake this kind of self-examination rarely arrives without pain. People do not voluntarily revisit difficult experiences when life is going well. They do it when the pain of staying the same exceeds the anticipated pain of change. A crisis, a health scare, a relationship rupture, a loss, often provides the catalyst. This is why people rarely seek help when they are winning. They seek it when they have hit a wall, when the old strategies stop working, when the cost of continuing as before becomes too high. The person in crisis is not failing. They are arriving at a moment of potential transformation. The structure that enables freedom. There is a paradox at the heart of health practices. The structure that enables consistent behavior also creates the conditions for spontaneity. When certain things are non-negotiable, when exercise is simply what happens in the morning, when time with family is protected, when sleep is respected, then the rest of life can be more flexible. The alternative is chaos. When every decision requires deliberation, when every day is a new negotiation with yourself about whether to exercise or not, the mental load becomes exhausting. Willpower is a finite resource, and depleting it on basic decisions leaves less for what matters. A structured approach to the day removes this burden. It establishes routines that operate automatically, without requiring constant decision-making. The morning hours before others are awake might be reserved for quiet, for reading, for gentle movement. The early part of the day might be dedicated to focused work, the middle hours to meeting obligations, the evening to family and restoration. This kind of structure requires deliberate design. It means looking at the demands on your time and deciding what matters most. It means protecting certain hours from intrusion. It means saying no to some things so that you can say yes to others. For people with families, this design must include those closest to you. A spouse who sacrifices her own health needs for everyone else is not being supported. Recognizing that her exercise, her social connections, her rest matter as much as anyone's is part of creating a sustainable household rhythm. Sometimes this means taking over responsibilities so she can attend to herself. Sometimes it means simply affirming that her needs are valid and important. The same principle applies to work. The person who travels constantly cannot maintain consistent routines. The person whose schedule is always reactive cannot protect time for movement and rest. Reducing travel, consolidating meetings, creating boundaries around availability. These choices trade some professional immediacy for long-term health. The payoff is not just physical. Structure provides psychological security. Knowing that certain things will happen, that certain times are protected, reduces anxiety. It creates a container within which the rest of life can unfold without constant vigilance. The cancer question. Few words carry the weight of cancer. Nearly everyone has been touched by it. A family member, a friend, a colleague. The diagnosis arrives like a thunderclap, changing everything in an instant. And despite decades of research and treatment advances, it remains the diagnosis people fear most. Understanding cancer requires understanding its complexity. It is not one disease, but hundreds, each with its own behavior, its own triggers, its own trajectory. What drives lung cancer differs from what drives breast cancer, which differs from what drives colon cancer. Yet certain patterns emerge across types. The most well-established causes are smoking and poor metabolic health. Smoking introduces carcinogens directly into the body, damaging DNA and setting the stage for mutations. Poor metabolic health, insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, creates an environment in which damaged cells can thrive and multiply. These two factors account for a substantial portion of cancer cases, though they do not explain everything. Beyond these, the picture becomes murkier. Some cancers arise from random mutations during normal cell division, what researchers call bad luck. The body constantly produces new cells, and each division carries a tiny risk of error. Most errors are corrected by repair mechanisms or eliminated by the immune system. But occasionally, one slips through. Tumor suppressor genes normally act as brakes, stopping damaged cells from multiplying. Oncogenes normally promote healthy growth. When mutations affect either type of gene, the delicate balance tips. Cells that should be stopped continue dividing. Growth signals become overactive. Given these complexities, prevention focuses on what can be controlled. Not smoking, maintaining metabolic health through diet, activity, and weight management, avoiding known carcinogens when possible. These steps reduce risk but do not eliminate it. This is why early detection matters so much. Cancers caught early, before they have spread, are far more treatable than those discovered after they have established themselves elsewhere in the body. The challenge is that early cancers often produce no symptoms. They are discovered through screening or not at all. Screening strategies vary by cancer type and individual risk. Colonoscopy, mammography, prostate exams, lung scans for smokers. Each serves a specific purpose. More advanced approaches include whole-body MRI and liquid biopsies that detect tiny fragments of tumor DNA in the blood. These technologies can find cancers earlier than traditional methods, but they also produce false positives that require investigation. The decision to pursue aggressive screening is personal. It requires accepting that some findings will prove to be nothing, that some stress will be generated chasing shadows. For many people, this trade-off is worthwhile given the potential benefit of finding something early. For others, the anxiety outweighs the advantage. Treatment has improved significantly in recent decades. For 50 years, survival rates barely budged. In the past 10 years, meaningful progress has occurred, driven largely by immunotherapy, harnessing the immune system to attack cancer. This approach has transformed outcomes for melanoma and kidney cancer. Researchers are working to extend these benefits to the most common and deadly cancers: lung, colon, breast, prostate, pancreatic. Half of people diagnosed with cancer today will still die from it. But the trajectory is improving, and the pace of discovery is accelerating. The art of starting. For people who have not prioritized health, the prospect of beginning can feel overwhelming. The list of recommended practices is long. The information available is contradictory. The gap between where you are and where you think you should be seems impossibly wide. The solution is not to attempt everything at once. It is to choose one thing, the thing most likely to succeed, and focus there. A 20-minute daily walk for someone who has never exercised is a victory. Adding a serving of vegetables to one meal each day is a victory. Going to bed 30 minutes earlier is a victory. These small wins build confidence. They demonstrate that change is possible. They create momentum that can carry into other areas. The person who walks daily for a month may find themselves thinking differently about food. The person who improves sleep may discover they have more energy for other activities. The key is accepting imperfection. Not every day will go according to plan. Not every choice will be optimal. Progress is not linear. The goal is not perfection, but direction, a gradual, cumulative movement toward better patterns. For some people, the obstacles to change run deeper than lack of knowledge or motivation. Self-sabotage, a sense of not deserving health, patterns of punishment disguised as self-care. These require different approaches. Sometimes the barrier is not behavioral, but psychological, rooted in experiences that have nothing to do with diet or exercise. In these cases, addressing the underlying wounds becomes essential. No amount of supplementing or exercising will fix a problem rooted in trauma. The daily return to nature. There is a simple practice that costs nothing, requires no equipment, and offers benefits across multiple dimensions of health. It is this: spend time in nature every day, without electronics, without distraction, simply being present in the natural world. The reasons are both obvious and subtle. Sunlight regulates circadian rhythms, supporting better sleep. Fresh air replaces stale indoor air. Movement, even gentle walking, activates the body. The eyes benefit from focusing at varying distances rather than staring constantly at screens. Stress hormones drop. Mood improves. But there is something more, something harder to measure. The natural world operates on different timescales than human affairs. Trees grow slowly. Seasons turn predictably. The sounds of birds and wind and water have shaped human experience for millions of years. Returning to them, even briefly, Reset something fundamental. An hour a day is ideal. Less still helps. The important thing is the quality of attention, being in nature rather than simply passing through it. Noticing rather than scrolling. Present rather than elsewhere. This practice becomes more valuable with age because the world tends to shrink. Responsibilities accumulate. Energy diminishes. The range of comfortable travel narrows. The backyard. The local park. The nearby trail become increasingly important as sources of renewal. The person who maintains this connection retains something essential, a sense of being part of something larger, of belonging to a world that continues regardless of human concerns. This perspective does not cure disease or extend life, but it makes the life being lived richer, deeper, more worth extending. The integration of a life. Looking across all that has been discussed, certain themes recur. Health is not a destination, but a direction. It is not achieved once and maintained forever, but tended continuously. Like a garden, the choices made today matter tomorrow, next year, a decade from now. The body keeps score. It remembers the years of sedentary work, the nights of poor sleep, the meals of empty calories. It also remembers the walks, the strength training, the vegetables, the rest. It responds to what it receives, slowly but reliably. Family history provides a map, not a destiny. Knowing what ran in the family tells you where to pay attention, which aspects of health deserve extra vigilance. It does not tell you what will happen, only what might happen if you do nothing. Screening finds problems early, when they are most treatable. The anxiety of false positives is the price of early detection. For many, it is a price worth paying. Movement is medicine, available without prescription, effective at any age. The body that moves regularly maintains its capacity longer than the body that rests. Muscle mass, bone density, metabolic flexibility, cognitive function, all benefit from consistent physical activity. Nutrition matters, but not in the way the latest diet book suggests. Protein adequacy, energy balance, nutrient density, these are the fundamentals. The specific eating pattern matters less than whether it delivers these essentials. Supplements fill gaps, but do not replace food. Quality matters. Testing matters. The cheapest option is rarely the best option. Emotional health rests on a physical foundation. You cannot think your way out of a problem caused by poor sleep, inadequate nutrition, or chronic pain. Address the body, and the mind becomes more resilient. Patterns from the past shape present behavior. Understanding them does not excuse them, but opens the possibility of change. The adaptations that protected you as a child may harm you as an adult. Recognizing this is the first step toward choosing differently. Structure enables freedom. When certain things are non-negotiable, the rest of life becomes more flexible. The person who protects time for movement, for family, for rest has more to give in every other area. Nature restores something fundamental. An hour a day, untethered from devices, present in the living world, provides benefits no pill can match. All of these elements work together. They are not separate programs, but aspects of a single approach, an approach that recognizes health as something cultivated over a lifetime, not rescued at the end. The goal is not simply more years, but more life in those years. More capacity, more connection, more presence. The body you have is the only one you will ever have. It has carried you through every experience, every joy, every sorrow. It deserves attention not as a project to be optimized, but as the vehicle of your existence, the instrument through which you experience everything that matters. The practices described here are not commandments. They are invitations, opportunities to relate to your own health differently, to recognize that much remains within your influence, to take the long view of a life that is still unfolding. There is no finish line, No point at which health is achieved and attention can cease. There is only the ongoing process of showing up, day after day, making choices that honor the body you inhabit and the life you wish to live. This is not about fear of decline or avoidance of death. It is about something more positive, the desire to be fully present for whatever years remain, to maintain the capacity to do what matters with whom matters, to live not just long but well. The research continues to evolve. New discoveries will refine understanding, but the fundamentals are clear enough to act upon. Move every day. Eat adequately but not excessively. Prioritize protein. Get outside. Sleep. Connect with others. Pay attention to the body's signals. Address problems early. Tend to the physical foundation that supports everything else. These practices, maintained over years, shape the trajectory of a life. They do not guarantee freedom from disease or decline. Nothing can. But they improve the odds, extend the period of vitality, and make the years that remain richer and more capable. The choice to attend to health is available at any age. It is never too late to begin, never too late to change direction, never too late to start treating your body with the respect it deserves. The years ahead are not written. They are being written now, by the choices made today, the habits formed this week, the patterns established over time. You are the author of what comes next, not in the sense of controlling every outcome, but in the sense of setting the trajectory, pointing the arrow in the right direction. There is wisdom in the old saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. The same applies to health. The practices that would have served you best if begun decades ago can still serve you if begun now. The body responds. It adapts. It is remarkably forgiving when given half a chance. The question is not whether you will age. Everyone ages. The question is how, with what capacity, what vitality, what ability to engage with the world and the people you love. That answer is being shaped, day by day, choice by choice, by the life you are living right now. The body you have carried through every season of your life deserves more than worry and more than wishful thinking. It deserves the quiet dignity of attention, not obsessive monitoring, but the kind of steady, respectful awareness that any meaningful relationship requires. The single most important truth to carry forward is this: health is not something you either have or lose. It is something you participate in, every day, through choices that either support your future or borrow from it. If this discussion has sparked a thought, a question, or a memory of your own experience, we would welcome you sharing it in the comments, not because there are right answers, but because the conversation itself matters. And if you would like to continue exploring this library of wisdom, we invite you to browse other recordings and to subscribe so that new additions find their way to you. Until next time, may your steps be steady and your view of the road ahead be clear. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.